Hello, welcome to Master Mathematics. My name is Mr. A, and in this video you are going to learn how to solve equations using multiplication or division of decimals. Alright, so with this there are only two steps, but what you do need to keep in mind is your rules for multiplying and dividing decimals, because those can get a little tricky. Alright, so I have two examples here that we are going to go over. One is going to use division, the other is going to use multiplication to solve. So we'll review those division and multiplication of decimal rules when we get there. But let's look at the two steps that we have. So step number one is we are going to identify the variable and the operation in the equation. All right, so let's look at our first example and do just that. The variable is x, and the operation here is multiplication. We have 8/10 x equals 40. So again, that number next to a variable indicates multiplication like we have here. So again, 8/10 or 0.8x equals 40. Now what we are going to do in step two is use the inverse operation to isolate the variable on one side of the equation. That's the whole goal here, is we want to get this x, looking at the first example, by itself with that equal sign and an answer on the other side. That's exactly what we want to do. The way to do it is to use the inverse operation. So again, that's that opposite operation. All right, and we had identified that we were multiplying. So the opposite of multiplication is division. All right, so I'm going to write my division bar in. I'm going to write my division bar in here because what we do on one side of the equation, we have to do on the other. So I'm going to divide each side by 8/10. And let's think back to your division rules when we have decimals, right? We have a divisor and a dividend, and we have to set up the problem first in long division. So let me do that. We have 8/10 as our divisor, and we have 40 as our dividend. And I know I'm writing a little close there, but it's because we're essentially going to go through this step and then just do some mental math. All right, what you have to do there, first step is to write it in long division. Second step is to convert the divisor, so in this case 8/10, to a whole number. All right, so what we have to do in order to do that is move the decimal point one place to the right. And essentially here what we're doing is multiplying by 10. All right, because we're moving the decimal point one place, we're making the tenths and now a ones, we're multiplying by 10. So what we have to do to the dividend is also move the decimal point one place to the right, or multiply by 10. So we move the decimal point one place to the right here, and if we multiply 40 times 10, you end up with 400. So I'm going to put my placeholder 0 in. That's my next step. I'm going to add the decimal point, and I'm going to move the decimal point right up. Now what my problem looks like is we have 8, or I should say we have 400 divided by 8. Now let's think our math facts. We can do some mental math here. 8 goes into 45 times, therefore 8 must go into 450 times. And I'm just going to write that answer there. So what we have left in the example problem over here is we're going to bring down the x, we're going to bring down the equal sign, and then we're going to write our answer of 50 next to it. So x does in fact equal 50. If you wanted to check your work, you could plug in 50 into the initial equation. We could plug 50 in here for x and see if 8/10 times 50 is 40. And again, mental math, I know that answer. Yes, it does work out. 8/10 times 50 is 40. All right, let's move on to example number 2. So example number 2, we have 6/10 equals n divided by 3/10. All right, we need to identify the variable, that's n, and we need to identify the operation, which is division. So now I'm going to use the inverse operation, which of course is multiplication. And this is a little tricky to write here, right? Because your multiplication signs are either an X or just like a dot or a point. And in this case, right? X can sometimes be the variable, a point can be the decimal point. Luckily, in this case, our variable is n, so I'm going to write the multiplication sign here as I did as x. And if I multiply on one side, I also have to multiply on the other. All right, so what I am multiplying by is 3/10. All right, so those on the right side of the equation cross out. And now I'm going to multiply by 3/10 on this side. And again, reviewing your multiplication rules when it comes to decimals, we don't need to bring the decimal point down right away. We set up the problem and then we multiply. So we have 3 times 6 is 18. Write down the 8 here, carry the 1. 3 times 0 is 0 plus 1 is 18. And then that other 0, we don't need to do anything with. But what we do need to do now is count the decimal points. So in 6/10, I have 1 decimal point. And in 3/10, I also have 1 decimal point. And if you saw the video that Master Mathematics did on multiplying decimals, we did put, I should say because I was the one in that video, put a little parentheses with the number of decimal points next to it. I don't have room here, so I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to do is put the decimal point, as I had then, to the right of the digits. That's what you have to do. And then because I have 2 decimal points here, I'm going to move it 2 places to the left. And my decimal point will go before the 1. I'm going to add a 0 just for clarity's sake, but you don't need to. And then I'm going to bring everything down. I know that's a little messy there, so I'm just going to bring it down. We've got 0.18 or 0 and 1800ths equals n. And again, as I mentioned in the first example, you can, if you wanted to, plug that answer into the original problem, into the original equation, and test to see if you got the correct answer. I'm not going to do that here, but you could do it if you'd like. Thank you so much for being here. Once again, my name is Mr. A. This channel is Master Mathematics. If you haven't liked the video, please do so. Please subscribe to the channel. I look forward to seeing you next time. Adios.